Thank you. I'll call the meeting to order. If we could have an approval of our last minutes, our last meeting minutes for criminal justice. That motion is made by Supervisor McDevitt, seconded by Supervisor Driscoll. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Thank you. This morning we have Jason Carrison with us from the District Attorney's Office. He'll talk right into the microphone. Hopefully everyone will be able to hear him. And he has a couple items that he would like to review with you. And Jason, I'll let you go through both. Well, actually, let me do this first. I apologize. Let me start with getting a motion to put our first proposed resolution on the floor. It's a request to apply for Crimes Against Revenue Prosecution Grant, known as CARP. This needs to be applied for, and Jason will talk a little bit more about why and the timetable on that. Can I have a motion to get it on the floor for discussion? That is moved by Supervisor McDevitt, seconded by Supervisor Leggett. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Jason without objection.
Thank you. I think this screen will cover me here. We'll get that moved up. So the first thing, that Crimes Against Revenue Prosecution, that is a grant that we've received. I took a look. It goes back over a decade. It runs January 1 to December 31st. And the concept of that particular grant is it's going to enhance the recovery, hopefully, of monies that were essentially, to simplify it, stolen from the state. So, for example, someone commits tax fraud and they receive monies they weren't entitled to. The grant's idea is to try to support prosecution of those cases in the hopes that we can recover monies that were illegally obtained. I think a simple example I could give, let's say someone filed for unemployment benefits and it turns out that they were really working full-time the whole time, so they had just sort of fraudulently applied. Those monies can be recouped and returned to the state so that hopefully people that legally are entitled to those benefits would get them. Normally when I come up here, this is the time frame because of budget coming up. We've been in touch with DCJS, that's the Department of Criminal Justice Services. And I spoke to Supervisor Sieber last week. Since then, we got a follow-up email that said the same thing an email I got in July said, which is we have no new information yet. The budgetary side of DCJS has not been revealing to them what's going to happen in the timelines. So what I'm asking to do is to be in a position where when and if this comes available, as it has in years past, we're able to act. So basically to make the application. Technically, I think I would call it a renewal because the full application is done every 3 years. We did that, I think, might have been last year. So the renewal is a little smaller forms that we fill out. But the amounts, everything's sort of unsettled right now. The one thing I can say is it has never been a matching grant. It's always just a full reimbursement grant. The way it works, and this will be true for aid to prosecution as well, is based on the number of cases we work on and the hours that we track, then they reimburse on a quarterly basis up to whatever the maximum amount is. So that's the first issue. I'm going to jump into aid to prosecution.
Let me just take it one at a time if you don't mind. So given that explanation, are there any questions for RDA? No, if I'm not hearing any, I'll call the question then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Thank you. The second resolution before you this morning that I'll ask for a motion to get on the floor is to apply for aid to prosecution grant. Can I get for discussion purposes, a motion to put that on the floor, please? That's made by Supervisor Beatty, seconded by Supervisor Leggett. Thank you. Jason, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So aid to prosecution grant is similar to CARP in that it's on a quarterly basis and it's reimbursed based on the caseload. We always far surpass the amount that we're entitled to, I guess is what I would say. And that because of the nature of the crimes, that's violent crimes, serious crimes, which we have, unfortunately, our fair share. What we do, the same thing, is we run our calendars and we track our hours. I believe we have 2 attorneys assigned to that grant right now, and they track them. And again, we go way above and beyond what we're actually entitled to. So we max out the available funds in that grant. That grant runs October 1st to September 31st. And it's the same scenario as CARP. It's Department of Criminal Justice Services. We've had this grant for a long, long time. I anticipate we're going to get it again, but the timeframes aren't what we have been used to. So we're waiting to get an answer, and I got the same response, basically to one email responding to both questions. They don't have any information as of last Thursday. We want to be in a position to apply. It's not a matching grant as soon as we find out. And what I would say is, if I were to find out that suddenly they changed it and they were making it a matching grant, we obviously wouldn't apply before we came and spoke to you. Or if there's some radical change in what we've been seeing for the last 10 or plus years.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding the grant now? Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. How much are these grants in the past? What are we looking at, both for the CARP and the aid and prosecution?
The CARP, the last grant was $59,600, and aid to prosecution was $38,172. What we had done with our last budget is we tried to figure out what are we averaging over a 3-year span, because it depends. As I said, aid to prosecution, we're always far surpassing that number. CARP, we've generally come in below that number, but I think the average is around $41,000 a year over a 3-year span.
Over 3 years. Okay, thank you.
No? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, that motion carries. Thank you. Jason, you have 2 discussion items on the agenda. Do you want to start with your crime victim brick ceremonial display?
Sure. So some of you may be aware, and I'm sure everyone is aware that in the spring we have different functions related to crime victims. There's Crime Victims Week, and there's a lot of things that go on. The breakfast. One of the things that's gone on is in Albany, many counties participate in a brick ceremony, they call it. And I believe Supervisor Siebert's actually been there in the past in her capacity as a victim advocate. We have probably 24 bricks were laid, and the bricks will have embossed on them or engraved in them the name of a crime victim. Sometimes they'll have more than one. Sometimes you'll have more than one brick, depending on, really, to be honest, how tragic the specific case was. Something happened where they've learned there's infrastructure, as it's been explained to me, underneath that area, and they've had to remove and dig up all these ceremonial bricks. And to give you some perspective, at the ceremonies I've been to, victims go there. It is, I don't want to say that it's not the same as, I don't even want to use that example. So victims go there, it's meaningful to them. And so the fact that these are being disrupted and moved, we thought we should reach out. So we've reached out to every victim we could, and we had an idea, which was that maybe we could have a place on campus where these bricks could be laid and be just a recognition. What I'm told is they're going to create new bricks in the future and create a new area in Albany, but we have those original bricks. And I think because they're original, there's some meaning to that. I spoke to Erin Carone, who helped get us those bricks back, and she indicated they have some brick that is not embossed that we might be able to use for a border. And I think it's something that could be done without really any great expense to the county, and there might be a good location. So I'm bringing it here just to say, is it something the county would be interested in? And when I talked to Supervisor Siebert, she had suggested it might be something that should get referred to facilities, which I'd be happy to speak to that. And I did reach out to Kevin Hajos, and we're just trying to connect to discuss it a little further.
Thank you, Jason. And just to expand on that, I know we've all been talking about what to do with that courtyard space in front, or multiple uses, but there's also a space to the left of the building where there is already a brick walkway and might be a good location. But I think facilities would be the appropriate committee to take a look at that. I do want to let you know that when victims purchase these bricks, or people on their behalf, they paid money to have their bricks laid in Albany. It may have been a not-for-profit group that did it for them. It may have been a surviving family member. And as victimization continues to increase in our communities, what we saw was that victims of domestic violence, sexual assault survivors also purchased bricks to honor their survival as well. So it's in part a memorial and also in part a really inspiring story You can go online, you can watch prior ceremonies that take place in Albany. There's a great website, and I can have that sent out to you as well. But I do think that given the fact that our Warren County residents that were unfortunately victimized or lost their life due to a crime, we have those bricks. It would be nice to be able to have them here. And unless someone has a question or a better referral than over to facilities, what do you think? Where do you want to go with it? Or I'm sorry, Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you, Chairman. Is this something we can incorporate maybe in our new design up front, correct? Is that?
Well, that's definitely an option. I think there's also some standing locations too that we could take a look at. But that's why I thought maybe facilities that Chairman Beatty was open to putting that on the agenda. Your facilities, right?
I think it's a.
Yeah. Well, yes, I'm gonna be talking with Kevin Hajos after this meeting. So maybe, I know it's, maybe we can add it for discussion discussion purposes.
That would be great. I know our DA said he's more than willing to come and talk about this to that committee as well. Any other questions about this? Can we give the go? Can we make, do I need a motion to refer to facilities? No. Okay, so we'll just put that on the agenda. Thank you, Jason. And then he also he'd like to just give a quick update on the status of courts and grand jury and what's going on in his office and how that looks now that we're living in such a different world.
Yeah, so the court systems is not a one-size-fit-all for the state, and it's not even for inside the county. It depends on which court you're referring to. The county court, I would say, was able to remain the most active during the pandemic, but everyone had to shift and make dramatic changes on how we were operating. The first thing I would say, sometimes, well, Kate Hogan used to say, it's better to be born lucky than smart. And we were very, very lucky that we were able to implement a digital filing system just in advance of the pandemic. We had completely shifted over in the course of last year into electronic filings. I don't think we could have functioned properly during this pandemic without having done that. I'm in a position now, I can be anywhere where I can get the internet, I can get a secure access point, I can watch body cams, I can review an entire file, I can disclose that entire file to defense counsel. That all started in January. I was here before talking about the changes in the law, and of course we saw major changes in sea change in January, then a mild shift in the spring. That sea change was retroactive. So the discovery, when I talk about discovery and disclosure and all that, well, when the January 1st hit, that was retroactive. So any existing file, so that's a harassment, a petty larceny, an arson, a murder, a rape, doesn't matter. This new disclosure responsibility and certificate of compliance responsibility kicked in. Obviously, that was overwhelming. And one of the things we were able to do during the pandemic is pour in a lot of resources just into that, trying to get that whole backlog and all the cases that were coming in. So we were able to do a tremendous amount of work, and you can do it from anywhere. It's all electronic receipt and disclosure. That's been just an unbelievable change for the way we're able to operate and comply. As far as the court systems go, the last case I was able to present in grand jury was March 13th. While I was in there, we had a jury trial going on in the county court. I think that went into a 5th week, and it actually went into court shutdown. So the county courts were shutting down, but thankfully they kept that active jury trials in the state were able to complete their cases for the most part. We were able to complete. A couple of counties were not able to. They just resumed this summer. A big part of what we were doing is trying to get things going again. Grand jury allows us to handle felony level offenses. It's something we must do. During this process, and I don't want to belabor this, we've been dealing with all the executive orders that have an implication in the criminal justice system, and then they're typically followed up by what are called administrative orders from the judges. In our case, Judge Katina was issuing these administrative orders. So you'd be interpreting all of these rules. We had some litigation revolving around them when it came to, say, preliminary hearings. It's been an adjustment, as we all know, for everyone and for the courts. Courts went to something called Skype for Business. They wouldn't use Zoom for whatever reason, but Skype for business. So for the courts, we've been doing a lot of Skyping in the initial stages because they still had to do its essential matters, arraignments, any essential matters, bail applications. So those are ongoing throughout the pandemic. All courts are open now in our judicial district. Our grand jury's been going for, I think we're in our 5th week. We have been very lucky, and I want to say publicly, I want to thank our local judges in this building and the Office of Court Administration. Our space does not accommodate a grand jury, period. It's not even close. So we had to work within the system to find a space, and we were able to use the Supreme Court room in this building. It's large enough. All the grand jurors can be spaced. Everyone's masked at all times. Witnesses are shielded when they testify, so their faces can be seen. It is a process. Whenever you're doing something in the pandemic, myself, if I'm presenting, or other prosecutors, we're cleaning the surfaces between each witness. We're helping the witnesses get shielded. Meeting with witnesses is a challenge because of our limitations in space, but we're figuring it out. We've had a very active grand jury since we were able to start again, because you can imagine there's a backlog in those kinds of cases. Local courts have to run differently. I would say our busiest local court on a day-to-day basis is Queensbury, because they meet on Mondays. In the old days, and I see Marcy on there, she can attest to this, you would go and that room would be, if it was a room this size, it would have 100 people easily in the room. And we would just call one by one or shoulder to shoulder working cases. You can't do that anymore. So it's slowing down the way things work. The prosecutors are in court longer, and in some cases more days. So that's been a challenge, just covering everything. We start our jury trials again in county court in what they call the 12th term. So I have our first jury trial is a homicide I'm handling starting November 9th. We have another serious felony crime or case that starts immediately after that. So it's all ramping up because we were not allowed to do jury trials. They're going to do some pilot programs, and thankfully they're not doing it here because they're trying to figure out, and you don't really want to start piloting on a homicide case, in my view. So they're going to, in some other counties, they're going to try to figure out how to do a jury trial. Again, like local court, when you do a jury trial, normally you would have over 100 jurors in a room for the day as we go through the process. We just can't do that for obvious reasons. So they're trying to figure out alternatives. Space is an issue. I expect jury trials are going to take longer. There's going to be more resources in my case, from my office to handle those. The last meeting we had, there was a discussion that the trial could take, one person said 3 to 6 weeks. We don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty as that goes, but you can imagine there's going to be when I'm on trial, I'm living that case. You can't do anything else. That's all you can do when you're doing a felony trial, whichever attorney's handling that, or attorneys plural. So it's all up and running. We've done county court felony hearings. We had a 2-day hearing, masked the whole time. It's just a very different experience, and everyone's adjusting. Courts are trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure it out. But we are in person in all courts in the county at this point, cap court included. And then there's some I call hybrid. So they do some Skyping. They're trying to do some Skyping with people who are in custody where possible, so that they don't have to leave the jail to then go back in and go into quarantine. So it's very fluid, I guess is what I would say. Like, that's a lot of words. I'm sorry. We're busy.
Very interesting to hear what criminal justice looks like now. Are there any questions for our DA? Online. All right, thank you, Jason. We appreciate those updates.
Sure.
And certainly look forward to hearing from you again soon.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
See you next month.
Okay. At this point, I just wanted to see if there was any public comment as it related to the district attorney. I'd like to do it for each department. Don, are we good?
There is no public comment at this point.
Great. Well, if there's nothing else to come in front of criminal justice, can we reverse the sign counsel? Everyone good? All right. So moving over to assigned counsel. Hello, Joy LaFountain. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. How is everybody?
Good. All right, we'll jump right into this one. And can I get a motion to put the first resolution request onto the floor? That's to delete the position of a grant administrator that was previously held and create a position of grant manager. This is a name change. Thank you, Supervisor McDevitt, and with Supervisor Driscoll for a second. Joy, do you want to talk a little bit about your first item?
We lost on 728, which was a blow. You mean my voice isn't loud enough?
Joy. Yes, right on the microphone.
Okay. We lost Patty on 728, which was a blow because she had a considerable amount of grant experience. It's going to be difficult to fill a position. I have a couple of people lined up, but it's got to be the right person. They have to work independently. They have to have all the knowledge, the math skills, and then they have to go through the 2 boxes of files that we have, as where Tammy can attest to. 2 boxes of paperwork that she's going to have to go through and get familiar with.
Are there any questions for Joy regarding this item? Okay, hearing next, I have I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. The second request is to fill a recently created position of grant manager, and Joy will explain kind of how these go together. But can I get a motion to get that on the floor for discussion? Made by Supervisor Driscoll, seconded by Supervisor McDevitt. I see it, Craig. I feel bad. I keep looking at these guys across the laptop. You're getting the next one, Craig. Joy, do you want to talk a little bit about this one?
The reason we chose a grant administrator position is that was a title that Patty already held, because she did grant work for a couple of departments. And when we went over, thank goodness for Tammy again, we went over the contract, it specifically called that position grant manager. So in order to get in compliance with the contract, we want to shift the name. And it is a little less of stringent criteria than grant administrator, so it'll be easier to fill the new position.
Thank you, Joy. Are there any questions regarding that? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. And Joy, if you could, Don had just let us know that it is still a little difficult to hear you.
How about now?
I think Don would tell you that you sound much, he can hear you clearly now, Mr. Lehman. Is that correct?
I can hear you guys. I had a trouble hearing Joy for the first part of her address.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for letting us know. All right, that one passes. Our third resolution before you today to get it on the floor is a budget amendment to access funds from Hurl Hearing monies for year number 2 to fund the grant manager and account clerk positions. Mr. Leggett, would you like to make a motion to get that on the floor?
So moved.
And I see that seconded by Supervisor Beatty. Thank you. That is on the floor. Joy, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
This are funds that were already in place and have been funding for the first year to we're the grant manager, previously the grant administrator, and my account clerk positions, who is Martha DeLarm.
Great, thank you. And I just want to know, again, these are monies that do not require a county match, and just like the public defender's office, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joy, if the money goes, the position goes. Correct. Great, thank you.
So,
Any questions? Yes,
yes.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Are these, we already have these monies? These monies are to be distributed. Which are they?
This is for distribution. So we've already spent the monies, and now we're filling the coffers back up.
So this is reimbursable?
Correct.
Thank you.
All these are reimbursable.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Joy, your next resolution is a request to create and fill a part-time clerk number 2 position to use remaining hours that are not currently being used by part-time clerk number 1. This gets a little complicated, but Joy spent some time with me last week explaining it. I'm sure she'll do a great job if we can get this on the floor for discussion. That motion is made by Supervisor McDevitt and seconded by Supervisor Shepler. Thank you. Joy?
Well, we have a clerk number 1 position that only uses very minimal hours. I don't know if you look to the rationale, there's 851.83 hours left just for this year. So I'm barely scratching the surface for the monies that are available for an additional clerk. Both the account clerk and clerk number 1 work days, opposite days. Account clerk number 1 is Tuesday, Thursday. My account clerk is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, both for the morning period of the day. So I've got afternoons open 5 days a week to have somebody in there to continue data entry and processing applications, et cetera. Plus, we're still working through, we went live with our new voucher system in May. So we had a backlog, an entire file cabinet full of entries that had to go in, and we're still slogging our way through that just so we could be up to speed when they want their reports submitted to the state.
Any questions for Joy regarding that item? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. The final resolution request is a budget amendment to access the funds from contract distribution 10 for clerk number 2. Do I have a motion to get that on the floor for discussions? That's made by Supervisor Shepard. Thank you. Seconded by Supervisor McDevitt. Thank you. Joy?
Oh, this is an easy one. This just, the funds from distribution 10 are going to pay the part-time clerk. Right. And that's all reimbursable.
All those in favor, are there any questions for Joy? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No one's opposed, that motion carries. Thank you. Joy, do you just want to give a quick update? Jason got us up to speed on what his office looks like now. How are things going?
Well, surprisingly, my office looks almost exactly the same. Not a lot has changed because when I initially got into that space, it was pretty much COVID ready because it's a separate ante room where all applicants go in. There's a heavy lucite window with no breathing spot. There's only a tray to put documents through, so there's no physical contact for either party. Then it gets sprayed down when they leave and off they go. So it's pretty much right back to normal.
You're by appointment right now?
Nope, it's coming as you go. Good. So you get in there, so you get out.
Anyone have any questions for Joy? No, great. And is there, thank you, Joy, very much.
Thank you.
Any public comments, Don?
No, Supervisor Seaver, not this one.
Thank you. All right. Then let's jump into our final item, which is our public defender. And I think Marcy's online. Good morning, Marcy.
Good morning.
So her first request is to extend a contract with New York State Defenders Association for the public defense case management software in support of an agreement for $2,500 for the term commencing April 13th and ending April 12th, 2021, and to authorize annual renewals so long as that price does not exceed $3,000. I have a motion to get that on the floor, please.
I'll move it.
Who did that, Craig? Is that you?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's moved by Craig, seconded by Supervisor McDevitt. Thank you, Marcy.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. PDCMS is our case tracking system. We have used it since 2004, and it keeps track of all our cases. It requires us to use that for data to submit to Office of Indigent Legal Services so we can submit yearly reports. So we do need to renew this every year. The reason that we set a cap of $3,000 is if we're able to get more employees, we may have to pay a little bit more. And that's why we kept it at the cap, but the current contract is as it is, and I respectfully request that you approve it.
Thank you, Marcy. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you. The second resolution request is to lease office space at, it's my understanding we aren't voting on this today, right, Marcy? This is just for discussion until the county attorney's office has done their review of the lease, right? So just to back up for a moment, at the board meeting on Friday, Supervisor Simpson withdrew a resolution that was put through personnel in an attempt to make sure that Marcy had enough space and for all of her employees, especially during COVID, at the towers in Glens Falls. And there became some issues with the lease. And, you know, at Friday's meeting, I thank the county attorney's office for catching those problems. And, you know, for that exact reason, we all want to be able to know exactly what we're signing on to. So there were significant issues that were within this lease. I know they're looking into it, but it was not going to be resolved by today. So it looked like it was something that we have to roll over into next month so that we could get the approval from the county attorney's office prior to us voting to enter into a lease. Is that a good recap, Mars?
So in terms,
Go ahead.
so I appreciate Assistant County Attorney Dickey for speaking with me. There was issues in terms of a built-in renewal for next year. After hours utilities, if we are there after 5 or before 9 o'clock or on the weekends, we would have to pay additional utilities. In terms of a late fee charge for paying rent, if the rent was not there by the 2nd, there would be a additional fee, and the treasurer's office and the auditor's office had a problem with that. There was 100%, 150% holdover tenancy charge. The lease didn't include the cleaning and garage and garbage pickup that we had discussed. Problematic for me is, one of the big ones is increase paying for common fees in areas. If there's a problem with it, our position would be that the building is owned by the landlord. If there's additional expenses in common areas, that should be paid by the landlord. The right to access premises to show parties or office after hours are, which on notice to us. They don't allow for counterclaims if there was a lawsuit. They don't include the 2019 tenant rights law and the general obligation law for inspection. They want to be able to assign the lease if its building is sold, and there's no indemnification for our confidentiality and harassment policy that the county requires. So there's several issues in there, as you can see, that the county attorney has found and is redlining the contract and is trying to resolve that. We certainly wouldn't spend money and go ahead with this lease without the permission of the county attorney's office, and I appreciate all they've done. In addition, Supervisor Sieber asked me to speak to Liza with her department. She is under Department of Labor. There is no more space up there that we could sublet from them. And in terms of subletting from Department of Labor, Liza was able to sublet her department because of what they do and excludes things that are not done by Department of Labor, and my office's services do not fall within any of those categories. So that's why I asked this to be pulled from the calendar last week, and I appreciate everyone doing it. Obviously, if this falls through, we would like to continue to look for space, and I will keep everyone apprised, but we need a space that is safe and that the county approves.
Marcy, thank you for that explanation. Mary, is it reasonable to think that if we put this on for next month for a possible, we'd be able to, get those issues cleaned up with a lease or an update to discuss this in September?
Yes or no?
Yeah,
I think that next week would be fine, or next month would be fine.
Okay, great. So Marcy, if there's no objection from the committee, what we'll do is we'll roll this over, this resolution request, to next month, and hopefully prior to the committee meeting, we'll ask the county attorney's office to give us an update on the lease, if that works from Mary's office as well. Okay, I see a couple of questions. Supervisor Beatty, then Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This initial lease is, and I've had some experience with them, is very restrictive. I'm glad Mary is going over with a fine-tooth comb. There was probably 8 items as you were reading them, Marcy, that just are not acceptable, at least to me. And I can go through them if you want, but I'm glad Mary's going over and looking at them. Until we get a better product, okay, I can't support that, obviously. And I know you don't either. You were almost chuckling when you were reading all the things that they you can't work a minute past 5 o'clock. They want to charge you additional maintenance fees. I mean, come on, that was absurd. So thanks, Mary, for looking at that, and hopefully we'll get a much better product. But from my experience, this goes back and forth 2 or 3 times when I've had to deal with leases and companies. Redlining is just the first step from us. We redline, then it goes to them, then they redline back to us, and so forth and so on. So this could be a process. So this could take more than a month, is my opinion. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Certainly, we don't want to rush it, and we want to get it right. Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. On the sheet here, you have furniture and equipment. Are we purchasing those or is that part of the lease?
That would be part of our indigent legal services grants. We furniture and any supplies, anything that we do as from indigent legal services funding under Harrell Herring.
And those are purchases.
Yes, that would be made with grant funding, no matching funds by the county, no expenditure by the county.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so if, without objection, what I'll do, Mars, is I'll just keep that on our agenda for September and we'll revisit it and with new information from the county attorney's office.
Thank you.
Great. Are there any other questions for Marcy? No, John, do we have any public comment at this point?
No public comment right now, Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you. Without any new items to come before the committee, could I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you. That is made by Supervisor Scheffler, seconded by Supervisor Driscoll. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned, and we'll. I think criminal or public safety starts at 10. I think we have to wait right till 10, right? Yes, they're saying yes. Thank you.